It was just after midnight when I felt her crawl into my bed. Her hands were cold. Her breath was shallow. She didn't say a word, just pressed her little body into mine like she was trying to disappear into my skin. I didn't open my eyes right away. I thought maybe it was a nightmare. She'd been having those more often lately. I pulled the blanket over her shoulders and whispered against her hair, "It's okay, baby. You're safe now." But her voice came back quieter than I'd ever heard it. "Mom." Uncle watches me sleep. I blinked. The room didn't move. Neither did she. Her words just hung there like smoke. I turned my head, searching for her face in the dark. "What do you mean?" I asked gently, but she didn't answer. She just clutched my arm tighter and tucked her chin against my chest. Like she had already said too much. The next morning she didn't bring it up, and I didn't push her. Not because I didn't care, but because I didn't want it to be real. She ate her cereal like nothing happened, sang softly to herself while brushing her doll's hair, laughed when I handed her mismatched socks. I told myself it was just a dream. Kids say strange things when they're half asleep. They imagine shadows. They misremember faces. They mix up what's real and what's not. Right. Except that night wasn't the first time something had felt off. 2 weeks earlier, she'd come back from my parents' house after a weekend visit, quiet, withdrawn. She wouldn't hug her grandfather goodbye. And when I asked her what she did that weekend, she just said, "I stayed in my room." Mostly. Uncle was always in the hallway. It had sounded innocent enough. Annoyed, maybe, not scared. I even joked he probably just missed his room. She didn't laugh. Looking back now, I can't believe how much I dismissed. How many little things I brushed off with a smile and a pat on the head. That night, after she went to bed, I pulled out my phone, opened the Notes app, typed 5 words. Uncle watches me sleep. I stared at them for a long time. Then I hit save. I didn't know what it meant yet, but I knew one thing. I believed her voice in the dark more than I believed the silence in the daylight. Some truths don't arrive with proof. They arrive in whispers, and you either listen or regret it forever. It started small, the kind of changes you might not notice at first unless you're looking. And for a while, I was too busy, too tired, too eager to believe everything was fine. She stopped singing in the shower. That's what hit me first. My little girl, who used to belt out made-up songs about dragons and cupcakes and magic dogs, was now silent behind the bathroom door. So quiet, in fact, that I found myself pressing my ear to it just to hear the water running. She kept the door locked, too. I asked her why once as casually as I could. She didn't look up. "I just don't want anyone to come in." "Baby, no one's going to come in." She shrugged. "Uncle did." The words landed like a cold slap across my back. She didn't say them with fear. She said them like a fact. Neutral, like telling me the sky was blue. And somehow that was worse. I started watching her more closely. At bedtime, she insisted on keeping her closet light on, not the night light shaped like a bunny she used to adore, but the full ceiling light in her room. She said she didn't want to see shadows. I asked her if she had another bad dream. She nodded, but she wouldn't say more. Not yet. At school drop-off, she hugged me tighter, longer, held on just a second too long before letting go, like she wasn't sure I'd come back, like she was afraid to be alone. She drew too. She always did. But now, the pictures were different. People without faces, rooms with no windows, a girl in bed, eyes wide, while a dark figure stood nearby holding something square. I asked what it was. She said, "A phone, or maybe a camera. I don't know." I didn't want to ask what the figure was doing. I wasn't ready for the answer, and she didn't offer one. But the worst change, she stopped calling him uncle, just started saying him or the man who lives at grandma's. It was small, barely noticeable, but language like that from a child doesn't shift without reason. I didn't say anything to my parents yet, not because I didn't believe her, but because I wanted to be sure. I needed more than just instincts and shadows. I needed something real. So I started doing what I'd never done before. I started listening, really listening, and watching and remembering everything I used to ignore. When your child starts changing in quiet ways, the worst mistake you can make is staying quiet with them. I brought it up the way women are taught to bring up uncomfortable truths, softly with a smile wrapped in disclaimers. I'm sure it's nothing but, She probably misunderstood, but still, you know how kids can be, but lately she's just off. My mother stirred her tea and didn't look at me. She's always been sensitive, hasn't she? She said it like it was a flaw, a personality quirk to be managed. My father muttered something about overexposure to screens. Those iPads are rewiring their brains. I didn't bother reminding him we didn't own an iPad. I waited for anyone to ask the right question. They didn't. They just nodded, sighed, and steered the conversation back to the weather politics, what my brother was going to do about his new job, as if I hadn't just told them something was wrong with their granddaughter. Finally, I said it, carefully. She told me he watches her sleep. The room went quiet for 2 seconds too long. Then my mom laughed, forced brittle too high. That's ridiculous. He probably just checked on her. You know how paranoid you are about her waking up in the night. She looked at me over the rim of her mug like she was daring me to push it further, like she already knew what I was thinking and was warning me not to say it out loud. And I realized something in that moment. This wasn't the first time she'd done this. Not just with me, with him. I thought back to childhood, how he used to get away with everything, how boys would be boys, how girls were told to calm down, how silence was mistaken for strength and outrage was called drama. I looked at my mother, the woman who once bandaged my knees and combed my hair so gently I fell asleep in her lap, and I saw someone else, someone who had decided long ago that peace was more important than truth, that keeping the family together was worth sacrificing a child's voice, even if that child was her granddaughter, even if once maybe it had been her daughter too. I left before dinner, told them I had a headache. My mother didn't argue. She just pressed a hand to my shoulder, smiled the way people do when they want you to behave, and said, "Don't let your imagination run away with you, sweetheart." The most dangerous filter in any family is the one that turns warnings into whispers and whispers into nothing at all. It was a Tuesday. No drama, no storm, just an ordinary school night. She'd left her lights on again even after falling asleep. I walked in to turn them off, careful not to wake her. She was curled into herself, fists tucked under her chin, breathing shallow and fast. Even in sleep, she didn't look peaceful. I leaned down to kiss her forehead, and that's when I felt it. Something stiff under her pillow. Not a toy, not a book. Something folded. I slid it out carefully. It was a piece of paper, wide-ruled, slightly wrinkled. A child's handwriting, uneven. Pressing too hard in some places, fading in others. There were drawings, stick figures, a bed, a doorway, and in the corner, a shape tall, angular, standing in the doorway, watching. No face, just eyes, 2 dark circles. Underneath, she'd written 3 words, misspelled, but clear enough. He just stares. I sat on the floor next to her bed, clutched the paper in my hand like it might vanish if I let go. I didn't cry. I didn't shake. Something colder had settled in me, something heavier than grief. He'd done something that made her feel watched in her sleep, something that made her lock the bathroom door, something that turned bedtime into a war zone. And she'd tried to warn me in the only way she knew how. A piece of paper, a picture, a whisper folded under her pillow. She stirred just a little, eyes fluttering, lips moving. I leaned closer, thinking she might wake. But all she said in the softest, saddest breath was, "Mom, don't tell." I bit the inside of my cheek so hard I tasted blood, because now I knew. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This wasn't a nightmare. This wasn't childhood imagination. This was her reality, and I had missed it. But I wouldn't miss another thing. Not one more word, not one more silence. From this moment on, I was listening with everything I had. Children shouldn't have to explain what someone did to make them feel unsafe. Sometimes, all they can do is draw it and hope you're willing to see it. I saw him differently after that night. The way he walked, the way he smiled too wide, the way he looked over people's shoulders instead of in their eyes. He wasn't nervous, he wasn't remorseful, he was comfortable. Because men like him always are. I started visiting my parents more often. Once a week, sometimes more. He was always there. Watching TV, helping around the house. Offering to make dinner like he was part of the furniture useful. Forgettable, unnoticed. But I noticed. I watched him sit too close to my daughter on the couch. watched his arm stretch along the backrest, just enough to make her shift away, but not enough to draw attention. I watched him enter a room just a second too quietly. I watched the way his eyes flicked toward closed doors, not with curiosity, with calculation. One afternoon, he caught me staring. He smiled. What he asked, laughing. I shrugged. Nothing, just thinking. I let him think I was tired. Distracted slow. Let him believe I was still the sister who used to lie for him when we were kids. Still the one who explained away his temper, his sloppiness, his disappearances. Let him think I was too soft to see what was right in front of me. He didn't know I'd been taking notes. In my phone, in a notebook he would never touch. He didn't know I'd recorded his voice casual, offhand things, jokes that weren't jokes. He didn't know I'd spoken to my daughter's therapist, that I'd written everything down, dates and places and language my daughter used when she thought no one was listening. He didn't know I wasn't scared of him anymore. I used to think confrontation meant yelling, screaming, tearing the room apart. But power is silence with a purpose. Power is sitting across from someone who hurt your child and sipping tea like it's holy water. He kept acting like everything was normal, because that's what predators do. They depend on routine, on disbelief, on the loyalty of women trained to preserve the family before protecting themselves. But I wasn't that woman anymore. I let him walk freely through the house because I wanted to know exactly where he left his footprints. The cruelest men are never afraid of being seen because they assume you were never really looking. She never told me all at once. Children rarely do, not when it's something they're still trying to survive. It came out in pieces, in half sentences, in whispered questions, in moments when she thought I was too distracted to really hear. But I heard. The first piece came over breakfast. She was pushing Cheerios around with the back of her spoon. Quiet, detached. Do people go to jail for watching too long? She asked. I nearly dropped my coffee mug, watching what I asked, trying to keep my voice from shaking. She shrugged. Didn't answer. The next came during story time. She stopped me mid-sentence. Do moms always knock before coming in? Yes, I said softly, we're supposed to. She looked down at her hands, nodded, then whispered. He didn't knock. Another came on a car ride. She stared out the window. He said if I told, no one would believe me because he's family. I gripped the steering wheel so hard my fingers went numb. And then one night, while brushing her hair, when the world felt soft and quiet and safe, she looked up at me through the mirror. He took my blanket off, just stood there watching. I couldn't breathe, but I didn't cry. I nodded. What did you do? I closed my eyes. I thought if I looked away, it wouldn't be real. She said it like a fact, like a lesson she had taught herself far too early. There was no full story, no timeline, no complete confession, just fragments, pain stitched into the fabric of a child's memory. But I knew, and she knew that I knew, and that somehow was enough. I held her that night until she fell asleep, and even then I didn't move. Some stories don't come in words. They come in fragments, each one sharp enough to bleed if you're brave enough to hold it. I called a family meeting, just like they used to do when we were kids and someone broke something no one would admit to. Only this time, something much worse was broken. They gathered in my parents' living room, my father on the recliner, my mother perched stiffly on the edge of the sofa, and him, my brother, standing by the fireplace like he was hosting a game night. I sat across from them. No notes, no trembling hands, no rehearsed lines, just a decision already made. I know what happened, I said calmly. She told me. My mother didn't even flinch. She reached for her tea like I'd said the weather was turning. She's confused, she murmured. Kids say things. My father cleared his throat. Didn't meet my eyes. You're taking this too far. And him, he smiled. The kind of smile that used to charm teachers and get him out of trouble. The kind that once convinced even me. You know, she's been through a lot lately. She probably misinterpreted something. He said it like I hadn't been there, like I hadn't watched her flinch at his footsteps. I looked at all of them. For the first time, I wasn't afraid of what they'd say back, because nothing they said mattered anymore. I'm not here to argue. I said I'm not here to get your approval. They shifted. The room shrank. I stood. She said no one would believe her, that family would protect him. I looked straight at my mother. She looked away. Well, I said she was right. And then I walked toward the door, one hand on the knob, my voice clear, low, final. You don't get access to her anymore. Not any of you. If I have to choose between family and my daughter's safety, I will choose her. Every single time. I didn't slam the door when I left. I didn't have to. The silence I left behind was louder than anything I could have screamed. There's a moment in every woman's life when she stops being the glue and becomes the sword. We moved the following week. No fanfare, no dramatic exit. Just boxes, bags, and a one-way trip to somewhere quieter. Somewhere new, somewhere no one called her confused or asked me to lower my voice. The apartment wasn't fancy. 2 bedrooms, a cracked window in the hallway. Carpet that smelled a little like old books and something warmer underneath. But it was ours. On the first night, she slept through until morning. No footsteps in the hallway, no locked doors, no nightlight on full blast. Just the soft sound of her breath rising and falling from across the wall. I cried quietly into my pillow. Not because we were safe, because we had finally stopped pretending we ever were. Healing didn't come with paint or candles or new pillows. It came in small, unremarkable ways. She let me brush her hair again. Sat still, let me braid it. She started drawing again. At first it was just suns, clouds, birds with misshapen wings. Then one afternoon she drew a little girl on a swing, all by herself, smiling. She made a friend at school, started bringing home rock collections from the playground, showed me a beetle like it was a diamond. And I listened like it was because everything she chose to share with me was a gift I refused to miss again. I stopped apologizing to my parents, to old friends, to people who called to check in and only wanted gossip. I stopped explaining myself. I didn't owe anyone anything but my daughter's safety. And mine. She asked me once, "Are we okay now?" I looked at her knees, scabbed paint on her fingers, eyes less heavy. I smiled. We're getting there. Sometimes healing isn't about forgetting what happened. It's about building a life where the truth finally has room to breathe. It happened over lunch. Grilled cheese, apple slices, cartoon music in the background. A perfectly forgettable day until she set her cup down, looked at me and said, "I don't think he's going to hurt me anymore." I blinked, looked up from the sink. "What do you mean, baby?" She wasn't scared. She wasn't whispering. She was just saying it, like it was something she'd finally allowed herself to believe. "I saw him in a picture at Grandma's house," she said, "and I didn't feel small this time." My hands trembled on the dish towel. "That's good," I said quietly. "That's really, really good." She nodded, bit into an apple slice, then added, "He looked smaller now, like maybe he's not in charge anymore." And that was it. No tears, no drama. Just a child who once hid drawings under her pillow, now speaking like someone who'd claimed her own air, her own space, her own voice. Later that night, she pulled out her old markers. Not the brand new set. The old ones. The ones with dried out caps and scribbled labels. She drew a house. Just one this time. No dark hallways, no eyes in doorways. Just a porch. 2 people, holding hands in the sunshine. She held it up. "It's us," she said. I couldn't speak. I just nodded. Because it was... She asked me if she could bring it to school to show her teacher. I hesitated for just a second. Then I said yes. Because she wasn't hiding anymore. The day a child stops whispering and starts speaking clearly is the day you know they survived. There was no celebration. No ceremony, no big milestone marked with cake or confetti. Just quiet mornings, waking up without dread. Packing her lunch, without double-checking the locks. That was our freedom, unremarkable to anyone else, sacred to us. She still asks questions sometimes, not about him, but about safety, about what grown-ups should and shouldn't do, about trust and what it really means. And I answer her honestly, every time, even when it hurts. Even when it makes me feel like I failed once. Because honesty is our currency now, not secrets. I see it in her eyes, too, that she's watching the world in a new way, not afraid anymore, but alert, aware, like someone who knows now deep in her bones what danger looks like and what love is supposed to feel like. One night she asked me, "Did Grandma believe you when you were little?" I didn't answer right away. I just pulled her close, ran my fingers through her hair, and said, "What matters is that I believe you." She nodded, didn't ask again. The next morning we made pancakes, burnt the first batch, laughed too hard over the second. She danced in her socks on the kitchen tile, syrup on her cheek, light in her eyes, and I stood there watching her, this little girl who had once folded fear under her pillow and now twirled across my floor without it. And I knew we had broken it. The cycle, the silence. The sickness that passed through generations wrapped in loyalty and family photos. It ended with me and began with her. Sometimes the most radical thing a woman can do is believe her child walk away from her blood and never look back,